Hey folks, welcome to today's video production show and tell. My name is Joey Fameli, and today I'll be looking at this camera control system here. This is the Edelkrone jibONE and headPLUS working together. Now I've been in the market for a camera control system for quite a while. I've done like slider reviews in the past where I've checked out motorized sliders that have this lateral movement. You can get this like left to right movement using parallax on those edges to give you some nice dynamic camera moves. You can do some amazing time-lapse stuff with those. But they were always kind of single use for me. I didn't want to invest in a system that was that didn't have as many different camera move options as I wanted. I wanted something that had the jib and the crane look to it, and there wasn't a whole lot in the prosumer-consumer market. A colleague of mine recommended I check out this system to review here on Tested. And full disclaimer, I did reach out to Edelkrone to get a review unit of this. So they sent this copy for us to check out. So what is this? What does this camera control system do? I think first we should start by talking about what a jib shot, crane shot is exactly. Those are those shots where the camera physically kind of elevates itself up in the air. You see on other big productions, they have like giant versions of these that kind of lift the camera up, and somebody else might be controlling the head of that. For a lot of what you've seen me do on Tested, I'm trying to add dynamic camera shots to static objects often. When we talk about like figures or just like product stuff, I'm moving the camera around physically with my hands, and you can see it's handheld. It's kind of shaky, but I'm basically trying to add some movement to an otherwise inanimate object. But again, it's shaky, and when you get outside of like personal video or YouTube or anything like that, you kind of are expected, especially in the professional market, you're expected to have something a little more smooth. There is a certain polish that is expected, almost as if the camera is floating without anybody controlling it physically. Not only that, but also you can get angles that you can't normally get with a human movement. So this guy is a smaller version of that, but that's not to say that's a terrible thing, because that makes this a little more portable. I did take this out on a shoot that we did over at Sideshow. I was able to pull off some really interesting, very smooth shots with that stuff. And product photography, I think, is where this was really gonna shine. And if you do that kind of stuff, it might be worth looking at this to really give your footage a leg up on other people's who are doing, handheld stuff like what I do. So let's go over the details on what each of these elements are. Let's start with this jibONE system. You can see it's kind of built on these two rails, and those rails extend out to about 27 inches or so. You can bring it down really close if you need to do just a very small shot, but going out to extend to about 27 inches there, and you can lock that off. There's a lot of dials and adjustments for everything. You see here is like the counterweight. I'll go into the counterweight in a minute. But everything is based off just these hand dials. And if you wanted to do your crane and jib shot, you have this option, right? You have, if you go into manual mode, you have this movement here. Now, if I wanted to do something like a 45-degree angle, say I have this dial here, I can unscrew that and move this into a different orientation. And now you have something a little more interesting, maybe a little more of a reveal shot, where you can kind of start somewhere behind something and use different objects as parallax and reveal things. Or if you just wanted something more resembles like a slider, or even you can cheat a little bit and make somewhat of a dolly move. So you have much more variation of movements than you do on just a motorized slider. This kind of gives you a whole list of options. And then when you add the headPLUS, then you open up even more options, because you're adding the ability to do a pan and tilt, a motorized pan and tilt on top of this movement. So for power, they do come with battery plates that you attach yourself. This one is set up with two Canon LP-E6 batteries. I will probably upgrade to the V-mount batteries, those big guys that I power most of my stuff with, just to give it a little more juice and last longer. And to turn it on, you plug into the DC in, and it just turns on. You hear a little beep. You'll hear a beep, and it'll turn on. And there's no physical switch. There's no on and off button on these things. There's really no buttons on any of these, really. You just kind of plug it in, plug it and unplug it to turn it off. From there, you'll know that when you put a camera on, if you use a Ronin or anything that has like a motorized system to help move the camera, you'll know that like weight distribution and center of gravity and like balance is very important. If the motors are working too hard to move the system, it'll just tend to fail. It'll want to fail out so that it doesn't risk burning out the motor. So when you put a new lens, a new camera on there, you do want to go through the act of like balancing everything or checking for weight. And we'll do that in a bit. But to do that, you have these weights here with dials for the jibONE. You have these counterweights here. And this is actually a really cool system. I've used jibs in the past and cranes in the past, and like you're using like giant weights and you're putting these things on, you got 5, 10 pounds. These are all like, I think 1 kilogram weights, and very easy to just slide on. They have like these little circular locks here, and then you just screw this little thumb screw into the next weight. And that's how you get those things on. And then to attach your head to the end of the jib1, you have this kind of knurled end, and this is all kind of universal through the different heads. And you go into you have like these like lines that will give you like a length that you'll punch into the app. When we get to the app, I'll show you that. And that just screws in here with a hand screw. I'm not particularly fond of this. It feels like I'm over tightening constantly. You do want this thing to be tight because you don't want your camera just slipping off. I don't know what I think. I kind of want like a latch. I want something really, really tight to know that the camera is holding on there. I'm sure it's fine, but you do have to really give that thing a good tightening just to make sure. And it feels like it's probably not the most efficient way to hold that. Again, I don't know what the design aesthetic, what the design would be for that. Either like a latch, like you see on some heavy-duty tripods, or what. But that's how you attach the head to the jib1, and that's where the system really comes to life. But before you put the head one onto the jib1, you do need to balance the camera. Like I said, weight distribution is important. You want that center of gravity to be right there, right in the middle. So you have to do some adjustments every time you put like a camera and a new lens on. It's actually really easy. I've used cameras in the past that make you do this, camera control systems, and it can be a pain. This actually makes it pretty easy. You just have this little knob you pull out, you put into another slot here, and you just use that as a point of reference as you start adjusting these two different length rails to the point where everything kind of feels centered. So once you got your camera head set up onto the jib, you're gonna want to get the weight distribution on the crane, on the jib, just right. So you can see it's a little front heavy, it wants to fall forward when I let go of it. So I'm gonna move this weight back until I get something that's just kind of, if I let it go, it just kind of hangs out. It's not front heavy, and it's not back heavy. So when you get there, you know that you have a ready-to-use crane or ready-to-use Edelkrone jibONE set to go. And you have two options at this point. I mean, you can see, this is actually one of my favorite things about this, is I can just go manual if I wanted to. I can just do it the old-fashioned way and get a shot I want and just move the jib manually. Or I think the more useful way to do it is using the app, plugging these things in and pairing them up, and then setting your keyframes. That you can either set them manually or you can use the app to set them, and then motorize your movements there. So let's go ahead and plug the stuff in. Let's jump into the app and I'll show you how those work. Okay, so now you see that I did two things here. I went to undersling mode to bring the camera much lower and get a lower angle, and I brought the jib to a 45-degree angle to give myself a diagonal movement. So let's go ahead and set a couple key poses. I have two objects here. I have this crow and this idle as an example. Let's say I want to start off with the crow and I want to come down and reveal the idle. So I'm going to unlock the jib and bring this thing up manually and point my camera at the crow. Let's say that's my shot there, kind of this master shot of the crow. Now to set this key pose, I find an empty slot and I press and I hold. You hear this beep, that means it's set. I can hit the info button to, now this is an issue. This is every time I try to hit the X or anything else, I tend to hit the key pose button, which brings the camera to that pose, which makes it really difficult sometimes if I want to like cancel out a pose and I hit it and like the camera's trying to move back to that pose and I'm like, no, cancel out. And I have to kind of wait for the whole movement. So I kind of wish there's a better way to just completely X out that movement without having this tiny little button. But anyway, I hit the info button and I have my information on my location. That's not going to tell me a whole lot. I can fine tune here, but let's say I kind of just want to see what that shot looks like. I can use this camera button here at the bottom and take a picture of the pose. So there's the crow, the master of the crow, and that pops up right in the key pose box. So I know just by looking at that, that is the crow shot. So I'm gonna come back down and let's do a reveal of the idle. I'll land right there. Press and hold key pose 2. Just for posterity's sake, I'll take a picture of that. There's the idle. And so now I got my two poses. I got my crow and my idle, and I'm gonna set my speed and my ramp. I want it to go, let's say pretty fast. Let's say like 75% speed, and I want it to ease in quite a bit. So that's like, ease in is like it slows down as it gets to the end. You can eliminate the ease in and just have it go straight and then stop. If you know you're not gonna use those edges, you just want that middle movement. You can do that just to make everything at a consistent speed. But this will have like a ramping of a speed. It'll slow down, start slow, go faster, and slow down again. So let's go ahead and start that. I'm in key pose 2. I want to go back to key pose 1. I can press and tap the pose 1 button and it'll move at that speed set. If I tap it twice, it'll just move at full speed up to where it needs to be. Okay, so now that we're at pose 1, let's say I'm gonna start rolling here and go down to pose 2 just by tapping this. And I get this nice smooth movement to reveal the idle. Let's say I wanted to like repeat those shots for any reason, maybe VFX, or maybe I just needed it to keep doing those shots while I set some practical effect in the background that had a limited time span. Either way, if I use 2 buttons, 2 fingers, and hit each of the poses, I will go into like a loop mode, and now I can like do little effects like hide back here and kind of wait as the camera goes, and maybe give it some smoke as I know it's getting to that last shot. And it's just gonna basically keep repeating those 2 poses forever. And you can, like I said, you can use that for a number of things. Or if you're doing like an interview, let's say it's just you, and this is a big plus of this, is that it eliminates the need for excess crew. Let's say I wanted to do an interview with 2 cameras and I wanted both those cameras to have some movement. Well, I can set this thing up and just have this do this very, very slow, deliberate, consistent movement over the course of the entire interview while I man camera A or operate camera A. If I wanted to set up multiple poses, I have the sequencer mode, which allows me to go from pose to pose to pose to pose, and then I can individually select the speed and the ramps for each of those sections. So let's say I wanted Mark 1 to Mark 2 to be pretty quick, but then I wanted a fast movement to move over to Mark 3. I can do that here through the sequencer mode. You have like a time-lapse mode where, let's say I wanted this movement here, I go to time-lapse, I wanted this movement to happen over a long length of time so that I can do things in the back and then have like this moving time-lapse shot over time. That option is here. You can set the time, set how many intervals you want, all the different options here, and basically turn that movement into a time-lapse. Stop motion is what I'm most looking forward to trying out. I just did a little stop motion film for fun, and everything is static shots. My camera is set on a tripod, and I needed to stay there as undisturbed as possible while I move the objects, because any camera movement's going to look kind of funky in stop motion. For this, you can actually link the camera up with the shutter cable, and have each step of the movement correspond with the shutter of the camera. So I can not only just, the way stop motion works, you move an object, hit the shutter, move an object, hit the shutter. Now I can move the object, hit the button, the camera will do a small step, and the shutter will hit. That way you'll get a consistent, very accurate movement over time, so that when you watch that back in stop motion, you get like a dynamic shot. You get a moving shot in a stop motion film, which is actually pretty cool. And you don't see that quite often. And that's the big thing about these movements, is that they're not very common in kind of the consumer marketplace. So when you see these kind of shots, it's unique and just makes your stuff kind of stand out. And again, going to like the professional world, you're gonna want to have something, want to have some idea of how to use control systems. And this thing is kind of a good stepping stone into that world, and it's super affordable. Like I said, there isn't a whole lot of these things in the market yet, and the jibONE kind of falls into that category of being almost one of its kind right now, while being extremely affordable and also modular to where you can add on accessories and grow. So this is the kind of camera of innovation stuff I'm super excited about. Like, new cameras are great. I'm still using the GH5, which is years old. I'm not super gung-ho about new cameras as much as I am about this stuff. I kind of want to see this stuff become more available, and so that we can do much more with our visual language when it comes to us as video folks and photography folks. So there you go. That's the Edelkrone jibONE. I'm super excited to try it out some more. I'll post some stop motion tests if you guys are interested in that. Please let me know what you think about this stuff in general. I know Gunther has been using Edelkrone products for a little while. I've used some Kessler stuff, and we can have a longer conversation about motion control. We might do that in the future and explore more of these ideas and products then. But Thank you guys for watching. I'm Joey from Tested, and I will see you guys on another one of these videos in the future. Thank you. Goodbye.